welcome back to Sun and Moon Stories. Are you ready for a sweet dream story? Today, I'll tell you a Japanese story called Little Finger. Once, there was a couple who had no children. One day, they went to a temple and prayed for a baby. On their way home, they heard a tiny crying sound coming from a patch of grass. They looked into the grass, and there they found a tiny little baby boy wrapped in a red blanket. They took the baby home and raised him as their son. The baby was so tiny. He was as big as your little finger. And even when he grew older, he stayed the same size. So the couple named him Little Finger. One day, Little Finger said to his mother and father, "Thank you very much for raising me so well. But now I must go out into the world and make my own fortune." The couple tried to convince him to stay home. "My dear, you are too tiny to go out in the world." But Little Finger insisted. So finally, they let him go. They gave him a needle to use as a sword, a rice bowl to use for a boat, and a chopstick to help him row the boat. Little Finger got in his boat and waved goodbye to his parents, promising to return home when he had made his fortune. Then he went floating down the river in his rice bowl boat. Little Finger kept floating along until a frog knocked into his boat and turned it over. Fortunately, Little Finger was a very good swimmer. He swam to the river bank and found himself standing in front of a great lord's house. Little Finger walked boldly to the front door and called out. A servant came to the door, but he didn't see anyone. "Hello, I'm down here." The servant looked down at the ground and saw Little Finger standing there. He hurried off to tell his lord. The lord came to the front door and saw Little Finger standing there proudly, his needle sword at his hip. "Hello, little warrior. What do you want here?" "I've come out into the world to seek my fortune. Let me become one of your gods. I may be small, but I can fight very well with this fine sword." The Lord laughed and said, "All right, you are too small to be my guard, but you can become a playmate of my daughter, the princess." So Little Finger became the companion of the princess. They soon became good friends, reading and playing together every day. One day, Little Finger and the princess went to a temple near the Lord's house. Suddenly, a terrible green devil with a magic hammer appeared. He wanted to take the princess away. Little Finger quickly drew his sword and began to stick the green devil's toes with it. But the devil's skin was so thick, he wasn't hurt at all. Little Finger didn't give up. He climbed up the devil's nose and started to poke his nose with the sword. Now, the devil's nose was very tender and the needle hurt very much. He was in so much pain that he jumped up, screamed, and ran away. He even dropped his magic hammer. The princess said, "Thank you, Little Finger. Now we can use this magic hammer to make a wish." She shook the hammer in the air and said, "Please, let Littlefinger grow taller." Each time she shook the hammer, Littlefinger became a bit taller. The princess kept shaking the hammer until Littlefinger was as tall as she was. They were both very happy, and the Lord was very grateful that Littlefinger saved his daughter. A few years later, Littlefinger and the princess got married. His parents were invited to his wedding. They were so surprised and happy that Littlefinger became such a kind and handsome young man. Littlefinger was loved by everyone he met. He and the princess lived happily ever